committee. I just have a brief statement that I'd like to make. I feel it is my duty and responsibility to respond to recent published reports regarding the school committee. First, I would like to disclose that at no time was there a secret deal between the school committee and Dr. Martes, as has been reported. Due to the open meeting law, executive session minutes cannot be discussed until they are approved and released by the school committee. In accordance with this law, the school committee is not able to discuss the executive session minutes of June 21st, 2010. The minutes of the June 21st meeting have not yet been approved or released. Since the school committee meeting on June 21st, there has not been an executive session. Tonight, the school committee is entering into executive session for the purpose of union contract negotiations. And before I conclude, I also want to comment on the fact that at no time did Ms. Slattery and I ever go into deliberations regarding Dr. Martes' contract outside the executive session. Finally, the school committee's focus has been and will continue to be to ensure the educational needs of all our students, and our responsibility is to ensure that they're met here in the Foxboro School District. That being said, I want to open it up to the committee. Whoever else would like to make any comments regarding the superintendent's status?
Could we hear from Dr. Martes first?
I think we were going to hear from Bruce.
Well, I too have prepared a formal statement, which I'll offer. It's not quite as brief as the chair's, but I will do my best. But I think we all have a lot of emotion over some things that were reported in the last week. And what I'm going to try to do is offer a little bit of clarity, which I think will be helpful. So I'd like to take a few moments of tonight's meeting to correct the stories that have been published in the past week regarding the superintendent's contract. I do believe this will clarify some confusion and help restore any faith the public has lost in this committee. The core issue, as expressed in both the Foxboro Reporter and the Sun Chronicle, appears to be the notion that the superintendent was secretly allowed to retire and that he is now acting in the capacity of a consultant superintendent. Today's Sun Chronicle opinion piece continued on this theme, writing that Dr. Martes was, quote, set up for retirement by the school board, unquote. Were this truly the case, I would understand and agree with the public concern. It is, however, inaccurate. The superintendent's contract was indeed modified for the current school year by this committee in June. While the details of our executive meeting have not yet been officially approved or released, the content of the meeting has been shared openly with the Foxboro Reporter by Dr. Martes himself. At the time of the contract renegotiation, Dr. Martes explained the need to reduce the cash portion of his compensation in order to comply with retirement eligibility law. This would result in a $40,000 savings to the town. There was also some high-level discussion that we might be able to find a way to extend his contract for the 2011-2012 school year. With that understanding, this committee went ahead and secured Dr. Martes for another year at less cost to the Foxboro taxpayers. It should be noted that the idea that he was now retired or that he was now a consultant superintendent was never discussed in the June meeting. This is why 4 out of 5 committee members commented for last week's stories that we do not consider Dr. Martes retired. It is also why we believed his renewal was routine and did not require immediate public notice. We were aware that his retirement would follow at some point in the future, but no decisions were made or discussed at that time. Today I contacted Mr. Glenn Kuchar, Executive Director of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. Mr. Kuchar confirmed that nothing Dr. Martes has done is illegal. He is entitled to begin collecting his retirement earnings while still serving as a district superintendent. In fact, he referenced several other area superintendents who are doing or have done the same. He put Dr. Martes' status with Foxboro very clearly. Quote, the law recognizes Dr. Martes as an active, full-time superintendent. One element of Dr. Martes' contract that has likely contributed to the misconception that he is a consultant superintendent is the fact that he is allowed several days out of district to share his experience with other school systems. This idea is not a new feature in his contract. It was negotiated in 2 years ago, before my time, before the June meeting in question, and likely when the then committee saw the value in retaining his services and recognized the strong team he had built around him. So the Foxboro public can rest assured that our June meeting was not about a secret retirement strategy, but rather was about retaining a proven leader and favorite son superintendent full-time for another year. In Mr. Kuchar's words, it's a difficult time for any town to be looking to replace a high-powered superintendent, and our effort to secure Dr. Martes for another year was, quote, prudent. Mr. Kuchar also shared that most negotiations of this type are negotiated and moved on, that they are, quote, generally not a news item. Which brings me to a comment about these stories. For the 18 months or so that I've served on this committee, there's been nothing but positive and productive discussion and teamwork, as witnessed by achievements spanning academia, extracurricular, budget, and physical plan. It's disappointing to me how quickly the media can change its opinion, to the point that it questions the integrity of this committee's open communications, and that it feels the need to use especially strong words. Quote, a shroud of secrecy, one reporter headline. Quote, reasons to feel abused, from the Sun Chronicle. And quote, the board's reaction to the expose borders unbelievable, also from the Sun Chronicle. Perhaps the real story was lost in the excitement and hurry of a bold headline. Rushing to a quick story of such dramatic effect is not in the best interest of our special community. Finally, it's a shame that all of this caused this accomplished educator to have to force a quick retirement announcement to his staff. I'm quite sure that's not how he envisioned it. But this committee will continue to work effectively with him and his team on behalf of our town. It is my hope we can all quickly return to a collective focus on strategic planning, academic achievement, and making the Foxboro schools the best place they can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
We have a copy of those statements, please?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Anyone else in the committee that would like to?
I think I'm very disheartened. I know it was said in the paper that I was annoyed, and I was annoyed at the way this all came about. I don't know how tying the town manager's contract in with the superintendent's contract and how this came to be. I always say the best way to stop a rumor is not to spread it. It's my understanding that a couple of selectmen had brought this to Frank's attention. If this is true, then I'm a little bit unnerved by that. I'm unnerved by the way that they probably procured this information, be it either through town hall or whatever. I think sometimes when things come across people's desk, that's where they should stay. That doesn't mean that we're being secretive. It doesn't mean that we're being private. But if something goes through an employment office, I'm sure not one of us would want our vital statistics exposed in that manner and shared with other people only to bring a certain attention to it. I take exception to the fact that, unfortunately, Frank, you asked me if I had negotiated this contract, and I told you no, and that I told you that Katie didn't either. Instead, you still chose to put it in the paper. You chose to put it in the Attleboro Sun. I would like a retraction and an apology because I did not sit with Kate and Katie and negotiate this contract, and I take exception with your reporter and the Attleboro Sun putting it in that light. I think it's very telling in this day and age, and I have said over and over that I'm not buying newspapers, but I saw this at my daughter's house, and I think this speaks volume of what's going on with the media. For us to have one sweet deal at the top of the Sun Chronicle. Down below here we have Chile has its miracle rescue. There were 33 people trapped 69 days underground. And this story trumped this. The whole world prayed and hoped for the rescue of these people, and this took precedence over this story, I think it's a very sad scenario of what's going on in our local newspapers, and I, for one, won't be buying the Sun or the Reporter in the future. I don't wish to hear things this way. I find that embarrassing. I really do. And I think we need to take a step back and realize, there's a lot been said about bullying, about harassment. Children learn from us, and I think this has been a very, very poor example of people jumping to conclusions. What's surprising is not one person has called me about this. Has anybody called you?
No, one person
Beverly, has anybody
called
called
me.
you?
I've had one person call with real questions, and once I explained, said, "Oh, well, that's not the life newspapers."
And I think what we have to realize, and I take my seat very seriously, for people to say that I should know better, that I should do this, I should do that. I can read, I cannot comprehend, I understand about open meeting laws, and it's my understanding that until we sign off on minutes and until we sign to release them, if we were going to continue to negotiate or whatever, then we are protected by the open meeting law and under executive session. I just think this whole thing has been blown out of proportion. And in my heart of hearts, I really would like for people to pick up the phone and call us and question us. Because the best way to stop a rumor is not to spread it. So I feel I'm very, very disappointed. I've lived in this town my entire life. I spent 2 years in that audience before I ran for this committee. I've spent 13 years on this side of the table. And I'll tell you something, I'm not so sure I want to live in this town anymore. When I look at what's gone on the town side with its search, you've put us in a position on this side that if we were to go out to look for a superintendent at this point, if they looked to the media, if they looked to what's gone on, if they looked on people's blog sites, let me tell you something, I'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who'd want to come in here and replace this superintendent right now. So I am thoroughly embarrassed by what has gone on here and the intention, and I'm ashamed to think that people think that of me. If you have a problem with me, pick up the phone. You'll get a straight answer. So,
Would you please read right directly from the law?
what it says is that sessions may be withheld from disclosure to the public in their entirety unless and until such time as litigating, negotiating, or bargaining positions is no longer jeopardized by such disclosure, at which time they shall be disclosed unless the attorney-client privilege or whatever exceptions under this clause. So I don't understand. Somebody told me in the Albert Sun they're going to report us to the Attorney General. They're going to say we violated the open meeting law. I don't know as we've ever voted on a contract in open session. I don't understand where this is all coming from. But it's a little bit mean-spirited, a little bit disheartening, and right at this moment I'm very, very upset, as you can tell.